And there we are, LinkedIn. Good afternoon, evening, wherever you are tuning in from. Welcome to the Remote Changemakers, the show where I talk with people who are part of making this remote revolution work. And today I'm talking with Agne Karnisauskaite from Lithuania. But before we start talking with her, I'm going to tell what is the topic. The topic for today is the remote executive assistant, the job of the future. Because most people out there do not really know what an executive assistant does. And believe me, it's way more than you probably think. So let us know in the comments, where are you tuning in from? We really want to understand, how international we are here today. So share the flag of your country in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you are an executive assistant yourself, or you have one in your company, we would love to hear your insights also on the questions that we are handling today, and share your insights. Like, what is your point of view on remote, on the executive assistant role? And also really want to encourage everyone to ask your questions in the comments, because throughout this live we will take customers in a way, right, Agne? We're taking questions from the audience, and we love to answer questions here. So please engage with us in the comments. We'd be happy to answer all your questions. But without any further ado, let's ask Agne who she is. Agne, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Leon, for having me. First of all, I'm so excited to be able to share my experience. So my name is Agne, and well, I serve two functions. It's only been 1 year since I've been working remotely as an EA, and I work for two companies. One, a digital marketing agency, and as well here at Remote with Leon, Erica, and our marketing guru, let's call him, because that's what he is, Farnadeep. And that's what I've been doing for the last year. And I have enjoyed every single moment of it, because not only was it something new for me, working remotely every day is a new challenge, something different around the corner, and definitely not a position you're going to get bored of anytime soon.
Absolutely. Yeah, you are the one that really opened my mind and my eyes to how important an executive assistant really is. Because when you came on board, it changes the world for us, really. But I'm really pretty sure that within the audience out there are a lot of people who don't really know what the executive assistant does. I mean, the word assistant itself, it creates a sort of imagination of what the role is, but it's so much more than just assisting. And can you tell us, please, and the audience, what does an EA do?
Absolutely. So, like Leon said, the word assistant, you might not think it's such a big role, but really, this is the core support team of the organization, of an agency. And the executive assistant usually supports the more top level strategists, such as the COO or the CEO. And the reason that it's so important is this person is so invested in their work. They have so many things to do, and all of these duties pile up. Basically, managing your schedule, organizing meetings, meeting agendas, creating summary decks. And that's where the executive assistant comes in, because they are there to take that off your plate and do a really good job at it, so that you can focus on what's really important for the organization and the company. Um, this is the person that's going to know your company inside out, from sales to operations to HR to all of the people in your company, because they will be communicating with them on a daily basis. And really, if you have a question, most likely the executive assistant is going to be the one who's going to direct you either in the right direction or going to tell you the answer right away, because they know it all. Really, they're like the encyclopedia of the organization, which is great. To have one person you go to, that they will be always there to support you.
Yes.
And because the executive's roles is oftentimes strategic, you are going to be that executor who does all of those things in the background so that they can execute, they do the strategy, and that they know when they wake up tomorrow morning, all of those things will be ready to go for that meeting. And that person you forgot to schedule a call with, the EA already did it. You don't have
It's
to worry
done.
about
Yeah.
it. Exactly. It's done. I mean, making sure that all the processes are in place, that is so important. They don't have to worry about that. They just do what
Yes.
they're best at, and they have you to do all of the other things. And it's not just all the admin stuff you get to do. It's a very autonomous role, because you will be oftentimes doing a lot of things yourself, initiating maybe new suggestions, new platforms you will be using, researching, talking to
Yeah.
people that might be useful, networking. That is also part of the executive assistant's role. And really, you are the support person, but support doesn't have, it's not a bad thing. Everyone needs support. And
Definitely.
because yeah, exactly. So the EA is basically kind of that secret superstar that a lot of people might not know about, but is always basically running the operation of the operator. There you go. Let's put it like
Yes.
that.
Yeah, I love that. And what you say is so true because many business owners or executives, they are so like consumed by all those daily little executional stuff that they need to do, that they're taking their time and energy and creativity away from that what they really should do, and that is to grow the business and to add more value to customers and build a brand. But when you're consumed by, and I can speak from my own experience, right? When you're consumed by this little things, which most of the time, company owners are not the detailed person. They are often like the big person, the big idea persons. To have somebody whom you can trust, understands the business like you, and catches those balls that are falling through, that's just like, it feels like a safety net. You always know there's somebody behind you who catches you when you fall. And that is really what I love also with working with you in our business. Like, it just, you feel like you can focus on that what matters most for me, and that's so awesome. But what is that you specifically like about being an EA?
Oh, I think for me, it's the fact that I get to communicate with everyone. Communication, I love talking to people. Maybe it's kind of obvious. I'm a person who talks a lot. So being able to talk, I talk to the executives, I talk to the team members, and oftentimes I'll also communicate with the client too. That's three different parties that you're communicating with. And of course, it depends on the size of those teams. It could range from a
Yeah.
small team like ours to an agency where there's 60 plus people. And I feel like sometimes I describe myself as the person who knows it all, but
Yeah.
you're like the person who catches all of that little information, and you have so many juicy details that you can't share with anyone. So it makes life a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, love that, love that. So for everybody who tunes in right now, we are here live with Agna Kanisauskaite in the Remote Changemaker show, and we're talking here about the remote executive assistant role, a role which is not very well understood, but very important in the remote world, and we will come to that in a bit. But let us know where you're tuning in from, and also when you have questions, please write them in the comments, because we'd be super happy to answer them for you. And we have somebody, Elisa says, hi from Romania. There's Marta who says, hey guys. So people are listening. That's great. So Agna, then
Yes.
when we talk about the role of an EA, right? And there are probably lots of business owners now listening to us, or maybe there are even people who are considering the role of EA to become their own. What are the three most important qualities of an executive assistant?
That is a very good question. And of course, number one thing is definitely organization, because you will be multitasking, and even more than multitasking, you're going to be filing things away, and then you're going to be finding them, and you're going to be telling people where to find them. So organization is number one, especially working in a remote setting where oftentimes you'll have to deal with international team members and clients. For example, you'll be handling schedules of your executive, and you need to arrange a time between a person who lives in the States, a person who lives in Europe, and the person who lives in Asia. 3 completely different time zones. So being organized, being able to match schedules, for example, it's going to be extremely important. So being organized and battling time zones is probably going to be one of the biggest challenges. But when
Always
you get it
struggle with
right
that.
and it works, oh, it's such a good feeling. And like I mentioned, you will be the one putting things away, and then you'll have to find them. And that could be 6 months down the line. So being
Yeah.
organized, having good naming conventions and folder hierarchies, for example, in your drives is definitely another important part of the executive's duties. And like I mentioned, multiple times, you'll find yourself doing 3 different things at the same time, and you need to be able to organize your time effectively and organize your working methods to be able to
Yeah.
get all those 3 things done all at the same time, that everyone is left happy. So organization, definitely number 1. And secondly, I think what's important, like I mentioned, I love communication, and communication is a skill you're going to need. And for those who feel like they're not great communicators, this is a skill that is actually learned. You're not born a great communicator, you learn it. And just because you will be that bridge between all of the parties, the team members, the executives, the clients. So being able to communicate effectively and understanding who you're talking to. And I think emotional intelligence plays a big part in being a great executive assistant. It's very, very important. Knowing what information to pass on to who, is it relevant, how are they going to react? That's extremely important. And
Yeah,
understanding
absolutely.
communication styles is also good to know. Sometimes this depends on culture and the person you're dealing with. People from one culture might react differently. So understanding that, like I said, this is something that you're going to learn if it's not your strongest suit, because it happens by doing and by communicating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so basically that's your biggest daily task is communication. So it's important that you have those skills. And thirdly, I think a very, very, very important quality and just is up-to-date knowledge of remote tools and softwares, especially in
Absolutely.
our setting. Uh, it's going to be difficult if you hire an executive assistant whose whole life they've worked in a traditional office where they might
Yeah.
not use all of the tools that we're using. So by having this remote knowledge, for example, project management tools such as Trello, Asana, testing them and using them and keeping your knowledge updated is definitely a requirement. And keeping that knowledge up to date, because you will be the person who most likely is going to be onboarding new softwares into a company, introducing them, researching them, and using them the most. So being able to, for example, if your executive asks, what do I do in this software or this one, you're able to answer them and you're able to show them instead of struggling yourself. So up-to-date knowledge and continuous learning is definitely another important quality of a very efficient and great, especially remote executive assistant.
Yes. So basically what you're saying with that is, as executive assistant, you are a driving factor in the whole organization's productivity, because you're keeping the communication up, you make sure that things don't fall through, which often results in double work, right? And you're researching the development of all the tools out there, which of course nowadays is like, it's going crazy how many new tools there are out there every day.
Absolutely.
But and business owners and managers, they don't have the time to sit down and research tools and test it, click. I know it myself, like 3 minutes, it doesn't work. Okay, skip it. It's so good to have somebody on board who actually, understands those tools, knows how to compare them, and gives a recommendation to the company which one suits best to the operation. Very, very powerful, Agne. So for everybody who's tuning in right now, we are 14 minutes in. We have the live with Agne here. We're talking about the remote executive assistant job, the job of the future. Let us know where you're tuning in from, but most importantly, ask your questions in the comments. Whether you are a business owner, you want to hire an EA, you want to know how to do that, or you consider yourself being an EA, ask any questions. We are totally happy to help you there. So the world is remote, right? Oh, we have a Swanadeep saying hi. Hi, Swanadeep. Cool that
Hi.
you're tuning in here. Bro, the world went remote, right? We are now, I
Hmm.
mean, everybody have experienced it. Why is this executive assistant role so important now in the remote world?
Okay, so this is where basically your remote knowledge of tools comes in, because a lot of companies are still freshly just moving to remote work and they don't understand what tools they're using, how they're using it. They're mismanaging their time. For example, Asana, let's take Asana, project management tool. How do you do this in Asana? Where do I find this? You are coming in with this knowledge, and a well-trained EA who has this knowledge is going to be your savior, because they're the ones who will be creating the structure for you and showing you how to use it, so that instead of panic mode, you are effectively using Asana as an example, as a tool, effectively, and that saves you time, it saves you stress, and you're able to easily find things. So this knowledge, if your company is just going remote, maybe your company just doesn't have the time to research these tools and to effectively learn
Yeah.
about them. So this is where the executive assistant in the remote setting comes in. They will be easing this transition, making it easy for you, and allowing you to basically jump right into remote work. You're not going to have to struggle right from the beginning, which is very important. And
Yeah.
like I mentioned, again, saving time. This is the biggest thing, and this is the most important thing. Everyone's time is so precious. And I think in the remote world, what's difficult is sometimes you'll find yourself working more than you want to, maybe, or you'll find yourself working overtime because you've just lost track of time sitting on your computer.
Yeah.
So by having an executive assistant who you can trust to take away these smaller tasks, the executive, for example, or yourselves, you're going to have the time to not think about what did I have to do here, did I have a call here. You're just going to open up your calendar or your Asana, you're going to see the task, and you're going to feel relief.
Yeah.
You're not gonna panic, thinking, okay, where is this file, where is the agenda, is the meeting on Zoom, is it on Google? Everything is in one place for you, and that's it. Your job is going to be to go into this meeting or to interview this person, and you're not going to have to worry about finding all of those things you prepare for it, which is so important. And really, I think it's so important to have a good executive assistant, because they're going to be your right hand person. And like you mentioned,
Yep.
sometimes in the remote world, things will go wrong, maybe more so than others. Sometimes you'll lose a very important document. Sometimes you need to research something before a big meeting and you just don't have the time. So you're saving this preparation time. And then you're going to effectively use that energy to create a strategy, to work on a new product, to nurture something that otherwise that time would have been lost. And I think the executive assistant's role is to fill in the weaknesses of the executive. And that's not to say
Yes.
it's not a bad thing. This person is exactly what they're there for to do. They're there to help you, complement you, and allow you to utilize your strengths while they utilize their strengths. It's a perfect combo. Instead of you struggling to do a task like research, which you really hate and you're really bad at it, you have this person who you can rely on, who loves to do it, and who's going to do a great job. And that's both people are utilizing their strength, which is efficient, time saving, and cost saving, I think. So instead of
Definitely.
doing something for 10 hours you hate, the executive assistant maybe can do it in 2 hours, and they're going to enjoy every minute of it. And so that's 10 hours you're saved
Love that.
already.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
this ties also in what you say about when it comes to those tools and make sure that things don't fall through. Essentially, you're building the processes of the company as well as an
Mm-hmm.
EA, because you get to see all the things that might not go well, yeah, or go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, why do things go wrong? Very often because there's no process designed for it. So as an
Yeah.
EA, I see you catching those worms, the ones that are slipping through because they go through because there hasn't been built this process to avoid that. And that is also what's so powerful about working with an EA. But when would you say that a company who is remote, at which stage would they need an EA? What do you think?
Right from the beginning. Absolutely, right from the beginning. You might think you can do it all, but at the very beginning of your company, that is exactly when you should be having an EA, because you're going to be working on so many different things, especially if you're going remote. Oh boy, are there so many tasks you're going to have to do. Having somebody who's going to start from the beginning is going to save you a lot of nerves down the line. For
Hmm.
example, so let's say you're just moving freshly to being remote, you don't have an executive assistant. You have to set up every single program and software. You have to set up all of your data systems, all of your communication systems. In that process, you're not actually doing any of the work that you're supposed to do. You're not running the company, you're not strategizing. These tasks are going to be the executive assistant's tasks, and they're going to be the ones setting everything up for you. So you don't have to worry about it. You're just one day going to wake up and you're going to see that it's all ready to go. You just click a link, you join, and all of the files are there. Everything you've been looking for, everything is digitalized, and then you don't have to worry
Yeah.
about it. So right from
Yeah.
the beginning. And another important reason why is because that's how you're going to build the trust, and that's how you're going to build bond together, basically. Somebody coming in halfway through is going to have a hard, not saying this is always, but maybe a harder time adjusting than somebody you've been through from the very beginning, who understands you and your workflow and your processes. So
Hmm.
definitely from
Yes,
the
and
very beginning.
misconception is also that you need to have an EA right from the beginning for full
Mm-hmm.
time, which is of course
Mm-hmm.
not true. I mean, you're working with us also not Monday to Friday full days. So yeah, there's a level of EA needed for every stage in the business. And we
Mm-hmm.
have a question actually from Swanedeep. He asks, does the transition to remote work environment leads actually to a rise in the need of an executive assistant? Which you partially answered already, but maybe you can elaborate on it.
Mm-hmm. So I think absolutely yes. I can't speak from an office traditional perspective because I was never an executive assistant in that setting. But I think not I think you might need more executives than just one, executive assistants, that is, one for the COO, one for the CEO, because they serve different functions in the company, and they're both going to need that support. So that's already maybe one extra executive assistant that you'll be hiring. But an executive assistant can also be for a team. They don't have to necessarily be just for one person. And all
Yeah.
of these uh, admin type tasks, they're just increasing because, like I said, you might have to look for new softwares, you might have to communicate with more people. Uh, and the executive assistant doesn't just have one hat. They can function in other roles too. They can be supporting the human resources department, the operations department, the sales department, and those carry so much extra tasks and responsibilities. So you might need one for departments even. So that's already 5 extra executive assistants needed for a company or so. So
Yeah.
definitely not necessarily just executive assistants, virtual assistants, administrative assistants, those are definitely on the rise. And like I said, I think this supporting role is just growing for the company, and of course that means more supporting type
Yeah.
roles.
Yeah. I love that because I think that, uh, especially in larger companies, at a certain stage, you need to think of having a head of remote in the business
Mm-hmm.
or a chief remote officer, how I like to call it. And I really see how EAs are part of the structure of the head of remote because
Mm-hmm.
essentially what I see EAs doing, and you're a great example of that, is you make remote work for the company because remote work comes much more down to the processes that you have in the company, the communication structure. And since it's very difficult to keep culture up in a remote setting, managers and executives, they need to focus much more on their time as well on making sure that all the people are heard and that the empathic and human
Mm-hmm.
side of things are actually much more need to be an agenda item than before the world was remote, because in the office setting it's a little bit more natural to have this human touch, but remotely you have to make time for it, which takes your time away from well, all the topics that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So yeah, larger companies definitely need to have a structure with a remote head of remote chief remote officer who has a team of EAs that's supporting all the different functions and roles in the company. So I really resonate with what you say. So let's reset the live. We are 25 minutes in with Agne Kanisauskaite, an experienced remote executive assistant. And if you have questions to Agne, as a matter of fact, we have a question, Agne. The question from Erica is, how do you know when to bring an EA and when to bring only an admin assistant? Because people often find these two to be similar. That's true.
That
What do you think?
is a very, very good question. So for me, executive assistant will be closely working more with the executive, and the administrative assistant will be closely working with everyone, doing more a little bit of everything. So I think it will depend on the size of your company and their department. And two, it'll be depend on what kind of relationship you need. If you need somebody to work more closely with the executive, then you'll hire an executive assistant. If you need somebody to take care of, for example, let's say Asana for the whole team, more client orientated, that's when you would bring in an administrative assistant. This word always gets me very difficult. I think there is some crossover between all oh my goodness, administrative assistants and their tasks. But I think the executive assistant will more closely be working with executive. For example, myself working with Erica and Sugatan, that meant that I was more closely working with the operation side. If you're working as an executive assistant, maybe for the CEO, then it's more of the kind of strategizing, top level execution things. So it'll depend on your needs as well. If your needs are that you need somebody to just help with management, for example, management of Asana or management of the drives, then administrative assistant is perfect for that, because they'll be a little bit of everywhere, making sure that things are okay. As the executive assistant will closely be monitoring, maybe, for example, Erica's or your schedules, more of your meetings as opposed to everyone's meetings. So it depends on the level of assistance you're needing, and what kind of relationship you want to have with this person. That's why I think when you're looking for an executive assistant, trust is going to be the most important aspect.
Yes, love that. So I hope that answers your questions.
I hope so too.
Erica. So looking at the executive assistant role, let's say there's people out there who actually are considering hiring an EA, right? What would be the number one piece of advice? And maybe you actually just answered it.
Yes, actually, let's touch on that.
For anyone who's considering to hire an EA for the business?
Yes, because this person is going to be basically your right-hand person. Trust and a great culture fit is one of the most important things you're going to be looking for in an executive assistant. You're going to be working with them daily, practically daily, and you need to be able to trust them and not micromanage them. And trust comes from shared values, shared way of working, just to name a few. So I think that's what's going to be very important when you're looking for your personal executive assistant, that good connection. Because if there's something that you don't like about the person, then it's going to be more difficult to communicate. You might be more biased towards mistakes that they might make mistakes are always accent. So yes, finding that person who you're going to mesh with is definitely the number one key thing you should be looking for when you are looking for an assistant. As well as from an assistant's kind of point of view, they should be very adaptable, because things are going to change every single day and very fast, especially in the remote setting, where one day you might be using Asana and then the next day you might be using and decided to move to a different program. So adaptability is very important, and that really goes for a lot of the functions in remote employees, because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And I think as an executive assistant, you're not just going to be doing one thing every single day. your executive might say, hey, I need you to research, as an example, neuroscientists I should interview. You have no background in neuroscience, you have no connections. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a challenge that's going to get thrown at you, and you should be able to just adapt to it and take it on head on and just do it to the best of your capabilities. And that's how you're going to learn. So being flexible and adaptable is super, super important as an executive assistant, or when you're looking to hire somebody who's going to be able to do that.
Awesome, awesome. Love that. I think it's just so true, especially in a remote setting, it's very difficult for people who are sitting at home to feel like they're part of the same team. So hiring first out of a culture fit
Yeah.
and fit to the values of the company, especially also the values of the person that he or she has to work with directly,
Yes.
is just so important. But we live in this scale world, right? It's all about skills and what skills are you bringing and what experience are you bringing. And so often it's forgotten that we have to look first. And I mean, need to build a relationship. You build a relationship with people with whom you relate. How do you relate? By shared values. So it's so on spot what you
Absolutely.
say. Absolutely.
And just to add to that, I think when you have the trust and the support of your executive, then you're just gonna flourish, and you're gonna want to put in 110%, because knowing that somebody trusts you is such a big motivator, I think, for a person. And in terms of culture wise too, I think it's so important. So it works both ways. If you want your executive assistant to show and shine, trust them. And the trust is to share value. So I think that first stage of interviews, for example, we've had a discussion very recently with Erica on Clubhouse that culture fit is going to be so important to identify as early as possible.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. So, Eric, I had another question. What are the key characteristics of an excellent EA? We kind of answered that in the question that what are the key qualities of the three most important qualities of an EA. But maybe you can give a quick summary for Erica so that.
Yes, absolutely. So it was organization, communication, and what else did I say? Ah, yes, knowledge of remote tools. I just want to say this person should enjoy what they do. I think part of the executive assistant's tasks will be maybe sometimes monotonous and sometimes repetitive. And a lot of people hate that. A lot of people hate doing the same thing again and again and again. But I love it. I love routine. For me, that gives me comfort. So doing these tasks that I have to do every single week or every other day, I have no problem with that. And I think that's also important. This kind of a personality trait. You should, it's going to be sound weird to say, but enjoy doing repetitive tasks, because that's what you're going to be doing.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm one of those persons who doesn't like it, but that's why I'm so happy that I have somebody like you. Great. Okay, Akne, I really appreciate taking your time to jump on the show, the Remote Changemakers show. I think you're really a change maker in this remote world because you are this advocate for the remote executive job, a job which is really underrated but extremely important in the remote world. Everybody should get an EA so that they can focus more on building on the business instead of working
Yes.
in the business.
Absolutely.
And with that, I really want to thank you for the live today. What are you up to for tonight? What are you going to do? What are your plans for tonight?
Working on an international team, you're going to be having some meetings late in the evening, and that's my plan. I have
Great.
some meetings to get to, which is a lot of fun, but it's okay.
Don't make it too late.
Of course not. Do we still have time for me to say one more thing?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Great. So, for those who are unsure exactly of what they want to do, maybe in their careers, being an executive assistant has actually brought me a lot of clarity, because it's a gateway to a lot of the other departments in the agency, for example, in my case, agency or your company, because you deal with sales, you deal with human resources, operations, and you get to develop a sense of which direction do you want to go with and grow in. And that's how I moved more into human resources, because that's the aspect I found most interesting from the executive assistant position. So being an executive assistant just opens your eyes to so many different new opportunities that you might not have been basically shown otherwise. So I think being a great executive assistant is one thing, but it's going to also open up some opportunities to develop into a role that supports that. So
That's so true. Absolutely. Well, with that, Agna, I want to really thank you a lot for joining the show. And to everybody who tuned in today, thanks for tuning in, and stay safe, stay remote. Bye, everyone.
bye bye.